Well, we're seeing some chilly air move south into the lower 48, at least across parts of the northern Rockies with this type of setup. We were looking at a strong polar vortex that had developed last week, really over the weekend, and now we're seeing chunks of that break off. It's really disorganized now. That's typical for this time of year. What was anomalous, I thought, was the fact that we were seeing a strong one develop, and some of that cooler air starting to move into the northern Rockies. Look at these temperatures this morning, starting off near freezing in parts of Montana, Idaho, especially into the higher elevations. Today, highs across this part of the country barely getting into the 50s, so some 20 to in some cases close to 30 degrees below average. Some relief to the heat across eastern Oregon, eastern Washington with this too, but that cold air is not going to move very far south. We're going to stay hot across the far southwest. So we're going to look at that in today's video. We're also looking at the potential for some tropical weather across the Gulf Coast states. What could be Dexter? I think there's some question as to whether or not this thing develops or not. The National Hurricane Center is looking at that still this morning, but the upper support certainly here this morning with a decent ridge of high pressure. Hurricane Center still looking at about a 40% chance of development as this system moves right along the Gulf Coast states here, right along the shore. So if most of the convection in the center of circulation can remain out to sea, we could see some development. Let's look at the long range a little bit further. I want to show you the weather pattern over the next couple of days into the weekend, also into next week. And by the way, if you're new to the channel, I hope you'll consider subscribing. About half of you don't subscribe, so I'd love to have you come back and be part of the community, and I always love hearing from you guys in the comments wherever you are. All right, let's look at what's going on. This upper high, a very... I debated on saying this or not. This is what came to mind this morning, a barotropic environment. You say tropic, but it's tropic, T-R-O-P-I-C. You also have what you call baroclinic environment way to the north, and that's where your weather is driven by the difference in temperature. Down here, though, not so much. You have pretty much calm winds aloft, good tropical development situation here. By the time we get to Saturday, though, our system would likely be ashore, so we're not going to be dealing with any type of tropical system. However, look at the steering winds here, right? I talked about those baroclinic conditions to the north where your stronger winds are. Underneath this upper ridge, though, you don't have a lot of wind. My concern is whatever forms along the Gulf Coast isn't going to move very fast as it moves inland. I don't think it moves to Texas, but it looks like it's probably going to move toward Louisiana, maybe Arkansas. This could be something toward Mississippi, too. We're dealing with for a couple of days with some really heavy rain. Let's continue to push this out as we move into, Wednesday and Thursday of next week. Overall, this is the operational European from last night. Things look pretty hot, at least as we head toward the 24th, 25th, 26th, with a pretty strong ridge of high pressure in the upper levels. And beyond this, we're not going to dig into too many details because this is just an operational run. This looks like a hot into July to me anyway. Stormy, too, today. More storms across the upper Midwest, across the Great Lakes, and also across Colorado. The main threat, damaging winds. There could be some hail. And within this area, there could be some tornadoes, especially watch this region toward the Chicago area, Milwaukee, southern Wisconsin, even parts of Iowa. I think you watch these as they move late tonight across parts of Michigan. Tomorrow, our severe weather threat drops a little bit further to the south. Let's look at these storms as they move across Wisconsin, Iowa today through the lunchtime hour. The time above me is Eastern time, so take an hour off for Central time. You've got this little bit of spin here that's moving through. With that, out ahead of this is where you're going to see your strongest storms. If you get some sunshine, which we probably will, you're going to get some stronger storms. So watch out, especially as we move toward the evening hours. Now the storms approaching the western shore of Lake Michigan. Once we move into the evening hours, they start to cross Lake Michigan. I think the question is, you've got relatively cooler water here. Does that help weaken the storms? I don't know. But once they pop back out, at least this disturbance, once it pops across land again, you're going to have still warm conditions here, unstable air. These storms could continue into the evening hours across Michigan, down into parts of Indiana, and then all the way, I think, across the lower peninsula of Michigan down into Indiana, possibly northeast Ohio. These start to weaken, though. We're now looking at 2 a.m. Eastern, 1 a.m. Central time. So things starting to weaken just a little bit as our front drops this way, and your main energy moves north and east into Ontario. Temperatures today, look at the numbers. Holy smokes. I was going to say, look at these 40s and 50s. Tonight, lows could drop down into the 40s early tomorrow morning across parts of northern Wisconsin up towards International Falls. It may be a little bit milder, believe it or not. This cold pocket of air is really moving now across parts of Wisconsin and the UP of Michigan. And then lows tomorrow, Friday morning could be cool again, feeling like fall, at least a taste of it maybe, as some Arctic air moves in. Arctic summer standards anyway. All right, across the southern plains, there comes what could be Dexter, maybe just a tropical depression. Not real sure at this point. Still a lot of question. I don't want to split hairs on it, but there could be some gusty winds. And as this moves ashore, some severe weather as well. Big storms across Colorado today. A few tornadoes possible with these too, especially into the afternoon and evening hours. And there go the storms. Watch out into Missouri too once we get into tonight. Now, it's not a huge severe weather threat. Most of those dynamics are moving towards the Great Lakes, so not a huge risk. However, tomorrow I think there could be some more storms firing across this area. And now we're looking at what happens with this tropical system. Remember, I showed you those steering winds aloft. Not a lot of motion with this, so we could be looking at some heavy rain here for a couple of days. Here's a look at your temperatures today. Warm. I want to show you the difference though tomorrow, because there's that cooler air across parts of Nebraska and northern Iowa. Notice how it's sagging south, right, moving into Kansas. So you saw your highs today. If you're in Kansas tomorrow, you go from the 90s to possibly the upper 70s. If you're in the northwest corner of Kansas, you may be in the low 70s. That cool air does not make it down into Oklahoma. It does not make it into Texas. The heat is back, and it really doesn't go anywhere. A wider look at the east now. Okay, so we've got these showers and storms today moving through parts of Ohio. This piece of energy will start to re-energize as we head into the afternoon. That'll bring more storms into Pennsylvania, western New York, so from Rochester, Buffalo, down to Erie, PA, down to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, maybe even Pittsburgh. A lot of this still west of Philadelphia, but as we move toward the afternoon and evening, these start to push east, also towards the nation's capital, and then down into along the spine of the Appalachians, where we've seen just storm after storm, afternoon after afternoon, and that pattern really not changing much. There is some storm motion. We've been dealing with not a lot of that across Virginia, North Carolina, so we do start to see, as our front drops to the south, more of a westerly flow. And along this front, look how everything is sliding to the east. So I think embedded in this particular region, you're going to see more storms Friday just kick through. Kind of cloudy with rain chances sticking around. Here's a look at your temperatures today. Wherever you get the clouds and the rain, you definitely get a little bit cooler. You can see that chillier air trying to punch in, but watch the northeast, okay? As our front moves through, temperatures cool down some. Across the mid-Atlantic, down into the southeast, we don't cool much, but you can see your highs heading into Friday. Pleasant across the northeast, upstate New York. What a time to be here. Highs close to 70. Very comfortable for July standards. A quicker look at the northeast, too. I had this stacked in here. I'm not sure. It may have been from the other day, but I'll go ahead and show it to you. As we head into Thursday, there come the storms moving through and then dropping to the south with that cooler and drier weather moving in. And there's a closer look at those temperatures. I want to fast forward just a little bit. Look at that. All right. Saturday morning, waking up to the 40s, maybe into some of the mountains here, into the northeast. Out west, it is hot. No relief to the heat here. The only relief you're going to see could be some of these monsoon showers and storms, which could get heavy. Now, we've talked about the storms across Colorado, across Arizona, some pretty decent chances for seeing some of those monsoon thunderstorms into the afternoon. That continues. The moisture sticks around across the far southwest, so a better chance of rain. And look how far north this starts to spread. So now we're up into Utah. Some of that moisture spreading as far north, I think, even as Wyoming. And then across the west, hot again. We've talked about the cool air that's moving into parts of Montana, but look how that chilly air also moves into the Rockies. The numbers dropping back into the 40s. Highs, though, they start to rebound as we head toward Friday and Saturday. Summer's not over. It's back, and we are up into the 70s and 80s once again. Eastern Oregon, Eastern Washington pushing close to 100. All right, that's a quick update on what's going on around the country. Again, we are watching what could potentially develop into a tropical disturbance, tropical depression right now. It's just a disturbance that the National Hurricane Center is watching. More to come. Hope you'll subscribe and come back. See you next time.